Hi, folks, and welcome to episode 601 of Locked On Canadiens. Today's episode is going to be a bit of a special one. We're going to focus on the tribute to Guy Lafleur that the Canadiens put on. We're going to talk a little bit about some other things with 3 up and 3 down, but we're going to focus on Guy Lafleur today. We wanted to really pay him the respect, and that's coming up on today's Locked On Canadiens.
For Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 601. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. I'm Laura Saba. I'm one of your hosts, also known as the Active Stick, and I'm joined by Scott Matla, Habs Eyes on the Prize. There is a lot to talk about in Montreal Canadiens land. The Rocket have made the playoffs. Carey Price is injured and might be resting, might be not, might be worse. We don't know. But what we wanted to do was we wanted to talk about all of that stuff on tomorrow's episode, because today we wanted to talk about the tribute to Guy Lafleur that the Canadiens put on at the Bell Center. We're also going to do our 3 up and 3 down as it's Monday, but there's some stuff that's a little bit relevant, I would say. And I happened to be at the Bell Center, and Scott was watching at home, and I think, Scott, you would agree that it was a pretty emotional night for everybody.
Nobody does tributes like the Montreal Canadiens. And you can run the old jokes that their ceremonies take forever and that they're drawn out. And then I will point to the game tonight and the ceremony ahead of time and the incredible work they did. Their sponsors were okay. They pulled every sponsor off the boards at the Bell Center. The only thing on the side was Guy Lafleur's signature, his, date of birth and the year that he passed away, and his number 10 as a tribute to a man who is a living legend. And that alone is extremely... To look at it this way is that the NHL is a money-driven league, and to have that many sponsors go, yes, we are okay with you not having us on the board in one of the biggest games of the season for the Canadiens with the way that it went. It speaks to the stature and the status of a player like Guy Lafleur. And then to cap that all off, the Frank Sinatra tribute video. I was fine going into this. I'm like, all right, I kind of got my tears out. I've kind of gotten over this. And then My Way starts playing, and there's a very big familial connection in that, one of my, now past family members was a huge fan of Frank Sinatra. So that hit, and we talked about how it's a song that gets overused sometimes, but with Guy Lafleur, it fits because he did things his way. He was Guy Lafleur unapologetically and forever. It was a stunning tribute. And then they gave him 10 minutes and 10 seconds of nonstop standing ovation, enough that the in-house PA was interrupted twice and then powered through a third time, because they would have kept cheering and this game would have been finishing up right about now. And it's 11:45 at night when we are recording this. This has been a garbage, no good, crap season, and the Canadiens fans turned out in droves to pay their respects at this game to a now past legend. And game aside, I cannot think of a better way to send off one of the icons of the 70s and early 80s dynasties than by cheering your absolute eyes out for 10 and a half minutes straight. It was about as close to perfect as you could get. And if you haven't had a chance to watch it, all of it, and I mean all of it, I highly recommend you find a way to do that, because it's stirring almost feels like an understatement, but it feels very apt in this point in time.
Do you think I can describe what it was like to be there? Do you think our listeners would want
Oh,
to
yeah.
hear?
Please don't take my word for it. I watched it on TV and sobbed in my living room. Laura was there. So, like, please don't take my word for it. I am so sorry.
No, I don't know if it's worth it, because I always feel kind of jerk. I've gotten to go to lots of special games in my lifetime, and this was one of them. And it always happens by luck. It was truly luck. I had a friend who's a Bruins fan coming into town, said she got tickets for cheap a long time ago because the Habs were not that good. Nobody was going to want to go to that game, so people were putting their tickets on the market. So we got really great seats. And I was excited to go to the game. And, and then a couple of days ago, obviously, when Guy Lafleur passed away, I thought, I wonder if they're going to be able to get a tribute ready in time for Sunday's game. But it's the Montreal Canadiens. Of course, they could get a tribute ready in time for Sunday's game. And it was interesting because, like my friend, a lot of people came in from Boston. There were a lot of Bruins fans. There's a lot of Bruins fans in Montreal as well. There were a lot of Bruins fans at the game. Obviously, there were a lot more Habs fans, but even the Bruins fans were on their feet cheering, doing flashlight tributes. And I didn't realize I was crying until I tried to cheer and my voice got caught in my throat. It was just one of those moments where you get really swept up with the crowd. It was loud. I do think it's a little bit for the Canadians to clock it at 10 minutes and 10 seconds. I mean, I wasn't timing it on my watch or anything like that, but it just seems a little bit too perfect. But it was very long. It was very long. It was loud. My hands hurt from clapping. Like I said, I didn't realize I was crying. It was very emotional. There were so many cheers, and I think people kind of really wanted to embody the cheering aspect of it, like Patrick Roy. I think it was Patrick Roy that said, we shouldn't honor him with silence. We should honor him with cheers. And we did kind of both. Even the moment of silence had cheering in it. And it was one of those things where, Canadian fans are generally okay at moments of silence, but this one, and so many times they tried to get the moment of silence going, and we just wanted to keep cheering longer. And it just felt natural. It didn't die down at all. Like the volume didn't go down. It was just 10 minutes of straight cheering, and he was trying to cut through, but there was no real break for him to cut through. And I think that was, it was such a special moment. And it's interesting because I expected for people to be crying, but I think they know that there's going to be an opportunity to pay respect when he's lying in state. And we're going to talk about that in our second segment. I think people knew that this was a moment to celebrate what kind of a person he was and to embody that joy. He had so much joy. We talked about it on our mini episode. He had so much joy. He was a hockey player. He loved his life as a hockey player. He enjoyed that. And, before they started the tribute that they had showed, leading in, there were a few quotes and things like that from him. And it was just, he was a great man on and off the ice, but he knew what it meant to be a Montreal Canadian, and he knew what he meant to fans. And so he gave as much of himself to fans as possible. And I do think that in our next segment, we should talk a little bit about some of the things Nick Suzuki said, some of the things Martin St. Louis said, because we want to contextualize. Like, today's NHL is very different than the old NHL, and today's Canadians are very different than the old Canadians. But the weight of being a Montreal Canadian kind of seemed to really come through tonight. And so I want to turn our attention to that in our next segment to take a break and tell you a little bit about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of the Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline is where the game starts. And don't forget, the NHL playoffs are coming up, and you can use BetOnline. Even though the Habs are not in it, there's going to be lots of action then. So one of the things that I wanted to share from, I think they showed it eventually on TV. I don't know, but at the end of the game, we thought the 3 stars were going to be Boston 3 stars. So people were filing out of the arena, but we noticed the Canadians were milling about on the ice a little bit. The Bruins were leaving and had left, and their equipment guys and all of that. And we noticed they were all kind of standing around, and then they went to the side and they raised their sticks in tribute to Guy Lafleur, who was on the screen. And I thought that was probably for me the moment that I cried the most, the emotion that I felt the most, right, since Friday, since we found out on Friday. It was, to me, it showed that they understand the weight of what they do and who they are. Even in the tribute, they were talking about how Guy Lafleur was talking about, like, we're playing a game for a living, that kind of stuff. It's very easy to say they're playing a game for a living, right? They're hockey players. They get paid no matter what. If they play badly, they play well. They make millions of dollars. And today's NHL is all about, there's so much science that goes into it and nutrition and all of that. But at the end of the day, we as fans, sports for us is a feeling. And all the BS, sorry, I'm like, all the BS gets swept aside. And it seemed to me that tonight was one of those nights where the Montreal Canadiens, no matter who it was, whether it was William Lagesson called up, or it was, Carey Price has been there forever, although he wasn't playing, he wasn't dressed. They understood what it means to be a Montreal Canadian.
And the thing is, they did show it a little bit on TV, but they cut away from it. You could see Brendan Gallagher on the bench kind of ushering the guys and making a gesture that, and I'm like, I know exactly what they're doing. And it's exactly, I think, how that game should have ended. They didn't win, but they damn sure gave it everything they had in that third period there. And they lost to a good team. It is what it is. And I have a quote here from Nick Suzuki after the game. And I cannot help but look at this and go, this is a guy who should be wearing the C on his chest next season. And this is from @Habs and High Heels. The Habs' Nick Suzuki says he'd like to take a page out of Guy Lafleur's book to leave a positive impact on people he comes across. Every time fans come up to me, I take the time to speak to them, to sign autographs. It's part of being a Canadian, a Montreal Canadian, leading by example in the community. And that continues. All that stuff is top of the line for me. And I want to keep doing it for the rest of my career. And I'm sure other guys want to do that too. This is a very young player in the NHL, one who's gone through a wild 3 years with the Canadiens organization already. And he gets it. I look at that, and that is someone who embodies what the Montreal Canadiens are. They are not just a hockey team. They are an institution in not only Montreal, not only in Quebec, but in across Canada. It means something to be a Montreal Canadian and to want to be that face, to always make time for fans. That's what Jean Beliveau did. That's what Guy Lafleur did. That's what Saku Koivu and all these other greats of this organization did. And Nick Suzuki wants to be one of those people. Nick Suzuki doesn't just want to play hockey for the Montreal Canadiens. Nick Suzuki wants to become part of the lore and the rich tapestry that is the Montreal Canadiens. And that, to me, is maturity and leadership beyond his years. And this is not a slight to a Brendan Gallagher or a Joel Edmondson or anyone else, but this is a guy who I would follow into the inferno if he asked me to, because he gets it. And I am so proud to have someone like Nick Suzuki playing for this team, to be part of that next generation of the Canadiens. And as far as emotions go, this is part of that. I am so proud of what he's done. And we've had his mother on this show, and it's very clear where he gets his sense of morals and values from. And it's a great thing to see in a sport that sometimes has lost its way a little bit in terms of what it means for the fans.
I just want to share something as well. This is from Michel Lacroix, who, as you know, is the announcer in at the Bell Center. And he says, "I would have been very disappointed if you didn't interrupt me in order to pay tribute to Guy Lafleur. With respect, you once again proved that you were the best fans in the world. Thank you for everything." It's been a few days since he's passed away, and there have been so many beautiful things written. And I wasn't joking. I tweeted about this, and I don't think people believe me, but even my therapist on Saturday morning had a Guy Lafleur anecdote, which is kind of, it's part of what it means to be a Montrealer, and it's kind of what it means to be a Montreal Canadiens fan. He's not really a Canadiens fan. He just, he's part of this city. He lives in the city. He's from the city. And I think that this is one of those things where when you think about it, there are no greats like that left. We aren't going to see greats like that. Even the modern greats, the aura that comes with them is very different than the historic ones, right? And you can have players that maybe will be better on the ice, speedier, more skilled, faster, all of that. But when you look at the idea of a legend, it's like it's something that is larger than life and will never die. And that to me is something that we've had a luxury of in Montreal. We've had so many of them. So many of the greats were Montreal Canadiens. And this feels like, it feels like one of the last. And so just a couple of details. If you haven't heard already, you probably have. But on the 1st and 2nd of May, the Guy Lafleur will be lying in state at the Bell Center, and fans can go pay tribute. And then on Tuesday, the 3rd, is when his funeral will be. His family has agreed to let Quebec give him a state funeral. And I think that's very generous of them, because it must be such a painful time for them, and to not only have shared your loved one with an entire province and at times an entire country and an entire sport, to have shared that throughout his life, you're also sharing your grief with everybody, and you're sharing him with us in death, which to me it's so selfless and it's so generous. And I think it goes to show just how big of just how big of a deal he was. And I will never forget being at that game. And there was so much craziness too on ice and officiating and things like that. We can get into that tomorrow. It's fine. But that just being in the arena at that time, it was one of the loudest times I've heard it. I have to say, it could be the loudest times that I've been there. Actually, that's not true. It's probably the second loudest time that I've heard it, for at least from where I was sitting. And people were very emotional, but in a very happy way. And I will never trade that game. So thank you to my friend Melissa for taking me. I didn't expect to be there, and I feel extremely lucky to have been part of that tribute, even though I was not around to watch him play.
I've kind of run out of words of like how to describe all of this, in that if you're going to be going to his I don't want to call it a wake, but him lying in state at the Bell Center, I do hope everyone behaves as they should. And Montreal is going to be in a state of mourning for those 3 days. When Jean Beliveau passed away, it felt like the city was very united in the remembrance of him, and I think we're going to see that with this as well. We keep seeing photos of flowers and hockey gloves and sticks left outside his statue at the Bell Center and around Quebec as a whole. And it's going to be the same thing for those 2 days that he's at the Bell Center. And, I don't think I need to tell people that, hey, be respectful in your tributes. I can't imagine anyone would try and act out there. My only regret is that I cannot go myself to pay tribute to a Canadiens legend, but when I come up for the draft, I will find my own way to do so in that. So, I think I've kind of run my course on stuff to say about that. I hope he's, at peace now. He gets to see some of his old line mates, some of his old friends and teammates. And I hope his family has some measure of, peace in their time of mourning right now.
And just two more things that I'm going to say from what I observed when I was there. We know we've got listeners all over the world who probably couldn't be there and probably don't have, access to the same TV and stuff that we do, news broadcasts and stuff that we do. But there was a line to go to his statue and leave something. When we arrived there, it wasn't there, but it formed as we were waiting to get inside. So there was a line for like this fan thing area fan appreciation thing, and then there was a line next to it to like, you know, go and leave something or pay tributes to the statue. And also I forgot to say that they had invited some legends. I'm sure you saw that on TV. That they had the spotlight on some of the legends that had gotten to play with him or just to be part of the alumni with him. And it was a really emotional, really beautiful night. And I really hope that our listeners are okay with us having spent a couple of segments talking about just the tribute. It meant a lot, I think, to me as a fan, and I know it meant a lot to Scott as well. So, you know, our regular programming will be back tomorrow, but we will still have our 3 up and 3 down. And that's coming up in just one moment. But first, you know the drill. Built Bar is a protein bar that tastes just like a candy bar. We love Built Bar. It's so delicious. They've got 18 delicious flavors that are low in sugar, low in net carbs, low in calories, and really high in protein. Not only that, they're made with real chocolate, and there are so many delicious flavors. They are all about the taste and the flavor. I use them in the morning as breakfast, you know, when I'm on the go a little bit. Scott takes them hiking. We love them so much, and every once in a while they have special edition flavors as well. They're really, really tasty, so there's always something new in addition to their 18 delicious flavors. And if you go to built.com, you can use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, so Scott, 3 up and 3 down.
All right, so I know we're going to talk about the officiating in tomorrow's episode, and I'm trying to keep this, you know, as low-key as I can because I do not have the ability to get my heart rate up this late at night. But holy sweet merciful Christ, in a year of horrific officiating, this is a game that was out of control from the start. The minute Jeff Petrie cleanly hit Patrice Bergeron, this game went out the window. Brad Marchand was off his nut. Trent Frederick was off his nut. And then they called Mike Hoffman for a penalty shot on a play where he made an incredible defensive play, didn't even touch Eric Halla's stick, and it resulted in a 2-0 goal for the Bruins. And I just got to go, what the hell are we even doing here? And apparently games just across the league were a mess tonight, and it was like everyone was uniformly mad at the officiating, which, you know, kind of points to, hey, maybe it's just not very good. So that's my biggest down from this weekend. It was really, really disappointing in what was an exciting game that the officiating played such a big role in that.
I mean, that's definitely mine too. And it was a topic of conversation at the game, actually. My friend and I were talking about officiating. It's hard to get into the NHL level of it. It is. There's so many barriers to entry. But not only that, once you get there, it's a thankless job. You're away from your family all the time. Everyone hates you. And you have to be on the ice for all, like dealing with these, like, for all intents and purposes, bros, right? Like, I don't want to do that. Do you? And it's like, you have to be in the best shape of your life until you're like 50. And I can't even, you know, like, nobody wants to do it. So there's a shortage, but then there's so many barriers to entry. So like, even if like there were people willing to do it, it's hard to do it. Like, no wonder officiating sucks. So like, I feel like, you know what we should do is we should get scouting the refs on. I'm going to try and get scouting the refs on, and we can talk about like why officiating is just declining in the NHL. Like, you watch the players get better with all kinds of science and improvement and investment and money. Why can't they do that with the officials? Anyway, all right. So another down. I feel really bad. I really, really do. Mike Hoffman. He's trying. He's trying so hard, but everything he does is wrong.
The game against the Senators was just, he's either making a superstar play or he's a dumpster fire. There's no in between. I thought he was very good against the Bruins, and just what I don't know what to make of him, because you can see that he's got the skill, and when it's working, it's working. but when it's going wrong, it goes wrong disastrously. Titanic levels of bad. And we talked about that with Jeff Petrie a little bit, that when he screws up, it blows up in his face in a big way. It's never, he missed a stick check and this or that. It's always Mike Hoffman made a mistake and ended up in the back of the net like clockwork. And I do feel bad.
And it's not like he made a mistake because he was being lazy. He was like trying to do a thing and it went wrong.
Exactly. It's like, yeah, he tried. Okay, but it still ended up in the net. It's like, my biggest fear is they're going to trade him, which cap space, great, whatever. And he's going to fit in with a new team. And we're going to look at this and just go, crap. It just wasn't the right fit. So
it's fine. You know what? I'll be happy though, because then, it won't just be that he's just bad at making decisions. You know what I mean? Like if he fits somewhere else, I'll feel better about all the crappy things I've said about him this season. And then third down, I'm not entirely sure if this is really a thing, but I feel like I'm going to say it because the Rocket had 2 chances to clinch. They ended up clinching by another team giving them the assist. And I know it's kind of like being nitpicky a little bit, but we need them to rise to the occasion, and they didn't. Twice.
It was a very rough pair of games there, because then Toronto went out and got smacked by Belleville the next day, and it's like, couldn't y'all have played like this? It's disappointing that they clinched the division last year with an overtime loss to Toronto, and then they clinched a playoff berth this year by doing nothing and having Cleveland win 2 games, which...
Thanks, Cleveland!
On the other side, the Rocket made the playoffs, which puts them on my up list. It's the first time in franchise history, first time in 5 years a Canadiens AHL affiliate will be in the playoffs. And my hope is that now that they have clinched a spot, everyone's shoulders kind of unclench a little bit, play the way that you know how to play here, secure that 2-3 spot there. You don't want to be in the play-in, and go from there. Deep breaths and do what you do best. I don't think they're as bad as the last 2 games show, but they still are in tough in a very competitive division.
I agree. They're also one of my ups. It's downs and ups. We had this happen last week where I had the same player on the down and the up. And now it's time for 3 ups. I guess their defensive play has been a little bit better in the last couple of games.
Jeff Petrie played really well against Boston. I know that he was a minus on the night, but we saw a physicality from Jeff Petrie. We saw prominent, precise playmaking from Jeff Petrie. I thought that was as close to like last year's Jeff Petrie as we've seen all season. They lost, but here's the thing is, I thought this was the best he's played. He set the tone early with that hit on Patrice Bergeron. He made good passes. He made good reads. I have very little fault to find with him. He goes on my up list for that right now. I thought it was a really strong game from him overall.
I think so too. I think overall they've tightened it up a little bit. I thought that they played. We said we weren't going to talk about the Sens game, but I will say that I thought that they played better defensively than I've seen them. It obviously didn't result in a win in either of these games that we're talking about, but the last few games I thought that I swore less about the defense. So I am going to give them an up just because, And then my third up is going to go to one Nick Suzuki, who I'm always impressed by. I think he's always amazing. He's always intense. He always rises to the challenge. But the words that he said today after that Guy Lafleur tribute game, he understands it. He gets it. He's amazing. I love him, and I'm really glad that they locked him up for a long time. I'm really going to enjoy watching this kid grow and become a leader on this team in this market. I'm really going to enjoy how he interacts with the fans. He's already doing it. He said himself, I try very hard to stop and give the fans time because that's something that a Canadiens legend would have done, like Guy Lafleur would, right? And I can't say enough about him.
I feel like it's probably cheating of me to do this, but I really don't give a crap. It's my own damn podcast. So my final up is going to go to Guy Lafleur, obviously. I think that's the very easy option here. Like I said in our short video the other day, is you don't become the all-time leading scorer in a franchise full of legends by accident. You stand head and shoulders on the shoulders of other giants in this team here. He was a little bit too late for, Maurice Richard. He got to play with Jean Beliveau at the very end of his career. And then he set that tone into that next generation of superstars, a Mats Naslund, Larry Robinsons and such. And then here we are years later that we talk about Guy Lafleur and we can prominently remember who he was. He'll be at my last up of this week here. I think that's only fair as one more tribute from some form of Canadiens fans around the world here. So that's my final up for this week.
And on that note, we thank you all for listening, and we hope that it was okay that we did something a little bit different than we normally do on today's podcast, and we'll be back to our regular programming tomorrow. Although if anybody does want to talk about Guy Lafleur, share memories, and that's going to be timeless. You can talk to us about any of that. You can email us your stories at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. There are some in the YouTube comments that we will be reading later this week. You can leave those in the YouTube comments as well. The Twitter account is LO_Canadiens. You'll find Scott Matla at Scott Matla. You'll find me at The Active Stick. And once you're done listening to this, check out Locked On NHL. Every day they've got something new. They've got power rankings. They'll be following the playoffs. There's all kinds of important news and things that they cover. So check out Locked On NHL wherever you get your podcasts.